This is really a privilege and a pleasure to be speaking with Matisyahu Miller, Matis, someone who, at least over the past couple months, since October 7th, has really been front and center in articulating and defending kind of Israel and its role in the wider society. And I wanted to kind of start with that. I'm curious, when was the first time that you realized that this war and what happened on October 7th, the protests and the pushback that you're going to get for standing with Israel is going to just be in a totally different space than anything that I think we've seen in the United States?
When did I realize that? That's a great question. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember that moment. I remember where I was on October 7th. And I remember, like you said, the first moment where my Jewishness came back into front and center. And not just my Jewishness, but a very specific version of it, of this kind of fight version of it. And I remember, when my first show got canceled because of the cancellations and the protests and stuff. I remember that, but I don't remember when I realized that this was going to be a thing.
But maybe tell me a little bit about that fight part of you. You've gone through a very real and very public transformation that we'll talk more about. That's not what I'm asking about now. And it would be understandable if you're now, kind of at this point in your career where, like, you got to really, the real fans are the ones who are coming to you. And your music is all about love, understanding, everybody come together. Wouldn't it have been so much easier to just kind of like, not say nothing, but say something a little quieter and not make it such a central part of your persona and what you're doing?
Yeah.
Where do you think that fight part comes from, that you allowed yourself to, like, this is going to be at the center now?
Well, I guess it's probably, my answer is probably similar to so many people, like the Michael Rappaports, who had never even been to Israel, or all the people that have kind of like, not that many, but there are some people, and some are famous, and many people who aren't, who have really leaned into their Jewish identity, even though it may not have been the main focus for them in their entire lives.
Yeah.
Me, I went on the journey. I explored and devoted and gave myself over to it for a decade or more. And so for me, it made, but the point is, it didn't come from the outside. It didn't come from anywhere. It just, the entire journey that I've been on, no matter whether you agree with it or don't, or believe in it or not, I think most people will agree that it's been authentic, and that's just the way that I am, and you may have tuned in or out for different parts of it, and so you may have made assumptions. Oh, Matis is this or Matis is that, But anyone who knows me for a long time and has seen the entire journey understands that. My Jewish identity has always been strong to me, whether or not I had a beard or no beard, or a yarmulke or no yarmulke, or was religious or not. When it came to the idea of Israel, and when it came to the idea of the persecution of Jews, from the time I was a little kid and the first time I went to the Holocaust, memorial or museum or whatever in D.C., or something always touched me very deeply about that. And I don't know, it's an interesting idea when you think of what is a Jew. What are like the fundamental things, when you look at the Jews today after what's going on, and you say, well, what are the key elements? Is a Jew capable of being a Jew without honoring their connection to Israel? Is a Jew capable of being a Jew without honoring in some way the Torah? Whether or not you choose to agree with all the laws or not, but honoring to some extent the connection to it, there are certain like pillars, right, of what makes a Jew today, right? And so for me, one of them is Israel, and one of them is the concept of persecution of someone coming against us, and what that does to to us, you know.
What really interests me, specifically with you, because of your journey and because it's so authentic and individualistic, why isn't it that Jewish identity, which ultimately is unchosen, it's the one part of you that you didn't really make a choice to become Jewish. It is something that it's inescapable. So I'm curious for you, as somebody who's so into self-expression, as somebody who is so into that individualistic journey, why isn't that underlying unchosen Jewish identity something that you find almost like suffocating, or like, let me escape it? Because it's the one part of yourself that's the unchosen part. You know, chosenness, so to speak, it's the irony that I've been thinking about a lot lately, is unchosen. No one chooses to be Jewish. Even a convert, once they convert, you can't like unconvert. You're stuck in it.
You're unchosen, not chosen.
Yeah. So
you didn't choose it.
Exactly. Right. So I'm curious for you, why didn't you ever just fully embrace that like universal, I just want to be a good person, I just want to be a man of humanity, a man of the world? What is it about the unchosenness of Jewish identity that always kept you tethered to it and not suffocated by it?
Well, if you like, in my growing up and as a kid before becoming religious, I was very much, you know, up until a certain point, you know, it felt not Jewish, basically. You know, I mean, even though I went to Hebrew school Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday, you know, for 2 hours or whatever, and I couldn't go to play football with my friends or whatever who weren't Jewish, right? But still, I knew I was Jewish. But, you know, when I started getting into spirituality, it was really around music and psychedelics, and Judaism was kind of far from that, and it was very much just about experiencing the world, and it was a different kind of thing. But somehow I always felt like, even in my early psychedelic experiences and stuff, this, when I would get down to this core thing, that this Jewish thing would come up. It would come up. I'll tell you, I mean, I'll just tell you like a quick story, you know, like I remember being 17 years old, living in Oregon, I was sort of in like a halfway house type of situation.
Sure.
I had just turned 18, so I was there under my own.
Yeah.
But it was sort of a therapeutic program, not religious, not Jewish, just you know, for, you know, kids that were struggling or whatever, young adults. And I took, not through the program, but I took ecstasy for the first time, the drug ecstasy, with a guitar player in my band and his wife. And during that experience, when, you know, all these things are happening and all these walls are kind of coming down and we're sitting together, and then she sits down on the piano and she says to me, "This is the music of your people, of you." And she starts playing this very Jewish sounding music that I had, you know, and I remember that feeling and that connection, that deep soul connection, that there's something ancient, that I come from this thing. And right away, without even intellectualizing or thinking what is it, just honoring it. You know what I mean?
Do you have any recollection what song that was?
No, it was probably just some kind of minor, you know, thing. But, you know, I mean, there were experiences like that, not all drug-induced, some very much not, but, you know, very sober experiences. But there were a lot of experiences that I had that sort of, I felt this calling and this longing. And from the very beginning of my spirituality, where I really started thinking about God, those things were always tied in together. And that always, it landed in Judaism for me, you know.
What's interesting is that we'll explore that kind of first chapter when I think you were very representative for a lot of kids. You know, I was a yeshiva kid watching, you know, what I'll call Matis 1.0, like that first, you know, coming out on the scene. And that sense of identification and the sense of like, wow, like this person that's us on the screen, who's famous, who's making it, and all that stuff. And that places a lot of pressure on you. And before we explore that pressure from that first period, I'm curious if now, what gives you the strength to almost reassume that kind of pressure vis-a-vis Israel? Meaning you did it once with your religious attire, and you took on a persona that wasn't fake. It was who you were, but it came with a lot of pressure. It came with a lot of expectations of what you're going to represent. And now all of a sudden, Israel becomes that for probably an even much wider audience. It's not just yeshiva students. It's not just the Chabad community or the Hasidic community or the Orthodox community. It's like the Jewish world is now looking again towards you. What allows you to have the capacity to represent something in the minds of the Jewish community and the fans and not repeat that sense of like, and maybe this isn't what you experience, but that sense of like exhaustion of like, I can't be everybody's symbol and I'm my own person.
Yeah.
And you're stepping into it again now, and I'm incredibly grateful. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But like, I'm almost asking, where does that strength come from? And is there ever times in this period where you're like this hero and you're really a warrior on behalf of Israel's reputation in the eyes of the world? Are there still times where you're like, I don't know that I could carry this image and this symbol in the eyes of, you know, the worldwide Jewish community?
I guess I don't think of it like that. I'm like what you call a pnimius yid. I'm like a Jew that experiences things from the inside out and not the outside in, you know? I react to what is important and real to me, and I don't think about the consequences really, you know, except in the areas in my life where I've had to think about the consequences. So when it comes to like what's important to me, and you know, I react to what's real, always, for better and for worse. I made like huge mistakes in terms of my career, in terms of my image, in terms of all types of things that if you look from an outside perspective, you would be like, why?
What are you doing here?
Why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You know? And it's always because of what is important to me in the moment. Some things are unchanging. I went to Israel when I was 16 years old. I went on this conservative program, Alexander Muss. My parents, though they are staunch like liberals, I would say Democrats, and they are hardcore, have a hardcore love of Israel. They almost made Aliyah in the 70s. I grew up with that feeling and that connection, and Israel is important to me. I've always felt that actually the place where Judaism is happening today is in Israel, not in America or really anywhere else. We're kind of like remnants of different things. America's its own thing, but you know, in Israel is where Judaism happens for real. Whether you're religious, not religious, none of it really matters.
Yeah.
You know, it's above all of that.
Correct. It's organic.
Right.
It's still really unfolding.
Right. Whereas as you get more further and further away from the heart of it, things get more
institutionalized,
right, and divisive, and this is this and this is that, and you know, but to be honest with you, I'm not a stranger to being sort of seen as an outsider or a rebel or a troublemaker or someone who doesn't go along with the norm. A very much a big part of my like becoming religious and Hasidic was this sort of rebel attitude against the rest of the world, you know, this sort of discovering my Jewish roots and then kind of like leaning into it with this fierceness that many Baal Teshuvas do, you know. It's the nature of who I am, you know, and even though I have this one peace anthem one day, and people know me as being sort of a peaceful, loving, nice kind of guy.
Yeah.
But people who know me also know that, you know, I have that. That is a big part of who I am, but I always come up against it. There's always a pull, sort of, to away from my authenticity and my real nature of my reaction and who I am into, well, you're this is who you are, this is, you know, and that sort of thing for me over time, you know, I've become a little more clear on who I am and what's what, you know, And so, you know, at some point in my life, it was very much about this rebellious nature, and the whole Hasidic thing to me was pretty rebellious, even though it was, you know,
It was super countercultural, and it was
Yeah.
like literally like you surrendered to the flow.
Yeah,
Like you were just
yeah.
like,
Nothing
this is
else
where it's taking
matters.
me,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
you like went down
God.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
You went down that journey for as long.
Yeah.
And if you'll allow me just to talk about that a little bit, you know, I remember, you know, when your album came out, I was studying in Ner Yisrael in Baltimore. I went to your show. I mentioned to you earlier when you were playing in Beth Tefillah. I went
Yeah.
with my friend Mati and Simcha. I don't want to out them now because we weren't supposed to go. You know, it was like that rebellious thing on the side. And I remember listening to your album, and you had like a Rebbe speak in between.
Yes, Shake Off the Dust, my original album.
Yeah.
I had my Mashpia and my Rosh Yeshiva on that album, Rabbi
Yeah.
Goldberg and Wurzburg.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
I remember listening to it and like
Oh, the bit about the Frierdiker Rebbe.
The
where he
Frierdiker
says he's
Rebbe.
not a regular man.
yeah,
Right. He
And
said a
it's-
man who believes in
it's nicht andrisch.
yeah. I believe in one God and many worlds.
Yes.
Not many gods in one world.
And
yeah.
like it created this really immersive Jewish experience, like for me as a listener, as a yeshiva student. And I'll be honest with you, I don't want to, you know, make it like bring back that pressure, but I remember even in yeshiva, like there were people who were like, you were a conversation of like asking your Rebbe, are we
it
allowed to
okay?
listen
Yeah,
to
sure.
Matis? Is that
Of
like,
course.
is that acceptable? We
Right.
all
Right,
did.
Right. And officially, not everyone was, but unofficially,
Oh,
everyone
everyone-
loved it.
everyone
Everybody
was-
loved it. Yeah.
everyone-
It was like the most kosher it could be because, you know, I wasn't cursing. My songs weren't about girls. There was no sex involved. There was no drugs involved.
Yeah.
You know, I was really a chassid. So what was really, I mean, everything was coming from the Torah. So what was really the issues that could be? The only issue that could possibly be was that it wasn't in the genre of what was
Exactly.
considered Jewish music, which at that time was basically 1950s and 60s arrangements of
It was
show
like,
tunes.
Exactly, it was like shiny shoes and trumpet
No, it was
music.
just the style that
Yeah.
that generation had
Exactly.
become accustomed to. So anything outside of that
Pre-Yishai
genre,
Rebo, pre like a lot of
it was, you know, I mean, it was green, Yossi Green,
yeah, Miami Boys Choir.
Miami, you know,
Respect.
it was yeah, I mean, it was a Avram Fried and Mordechai Ben David,
Yeah,
and you know,
Lipa had just started.
Lipa had done his thing, but everyone knew he was a wild card
Yeah,
already.
yeah, he
you
was
know?
all-
So for this was kind of like, you know, and you know, I
But-
kind of like
I'm curious what happens when you listen to that original album. If you ever go back to it,
I have.
Is that
yeah.
like peering, especially now when like, you know, that Jewish identity, and I feel like everybody experiences this. Like when I go back and look at pictures of myself
Yeah.
when I was in yeshiva,
Yeah.
I didn't look, you know, quite like this.
Yeah.
Um,
Very pure,
Yeah.
very naive, something very holy about it. I mean, those are my original, my Eish Tamid and Chop 'em Down and all, Refuge and Candle and
do you roll
Warrior.
your eyes at that Matisyahu, or do you?
No.
What's the feeling when you look back and you're seeing those pictures and the music?
You know, when I just think, it's different if I watch a video of it versus if I think about it. I don't know if that tells you anything. I don't know. But when I think about it, it's a very exciting time for me, you know. I'm in yeshiva. I'm studying Torah and Chassidus and Chabad Chassidus and everything. It's intense. I'm sort of like losing myself a little bit. But on Friday afternoons, I give my route over to a younger bacher, my Talucha route, you know, my Mifsoyim route.
Yeah.
And I get permission from the rabbi to go to Dumbo, you know, and to start recording music, you know, because I've kind of like convinced him that I think it will. They've seen me perform.
Yeah.
At the Catskills, or the yeshiva would go up to the Catskills in the summer, and Friday night, all the families and the rabbis and the bachim are all drinking, and everything's happening, and singing, and a couple of guys knew what I did from before, you know, or whatever, had seen me, you know, whenever, down by NYU or whatever, and it kind of encouraged me, and I got up, you know, like on the table, and I do, you know, my shtick, I do my thing, and the strictest Rosh Yeshiva known to man, Rabbi Goldberg, I mean, this guy's like, the Rebbe's gone, and
Yeah.
the Rebbe specifically put him with Baal Teshuvas. I mean, it's a whole thing. But this guy, very tough. He was in from day one. These guys were believers. They were like,
He's got real talent. He's got something.
Yeah. And then the question was just, okay, how and what and that. And they kind of let me do my thing, and I'd come to them with questions, permission all the time. Can I do this? Can I do that? But I lost track. Where
No, I was about to ask you.
Oh, but my memories of like going to the studio and recording and like learning Tanya and sitting in Central Park and writing the lyrics for Chop 'Em Down, listening to the instrumentals that we had been working on, or like going up to the Catskills that summer with the instrumentals of Warrior and Eish Tamid, and sitting in the gazebo after Chassidus and like writing the lyrics to Eish Tamid. My memories of that time are beautiful. They're really special. Like this kind of like the creation of Matisyahu, like when it happened. And I've had times, of course, where I've like gone back. I've listened to those songs. I'm like, wow, my voice is out of key. The trumpets are out of tune. Like, and then sometimes when I watch videos of me from that time period, I don't like it because I was so into the Chabad thing.
The look, yeah.
Not just the look, but the way that I talk.
Yeah.
I'm sort of a chameleon by
Sure.
nature. As an artist, it's like, how else would I be able to do the reggae music? I never went
You're able to mirror
I never went to Jamaica. I didn't
Correct.
hang out with Jamaicans. I listened to it, and
Yeah.
I was able to pick it up because I had a chush. I could feel it.
That comes from empathy and sensitivity, I think.
I believe, yeah. And basically,
So when
it came
watch
to this, and when I watch that, I'm just like, oh man, because I'm so I'm so in it that it's so obvious that I'm not thinking for myself at that point.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, before I start going out on tour and doing even at the beginning, I'm so insecure, unsure, and kind of like trying to emulate,
To
the
be what
Hasidim around
they
me.
expect of you, yeah.
And I kind of like lose myself in that at
Yeah.
some point,
So I'm curious. It's funny you say the ability. I do that too when I'm speaking to people. It's almost like there's this show on NBC called The Office. So
I love The Office.
Andy
yeah.
Bernard, who
Yeah.
I love.
Yeah.
So he has this character. When he comes in, he's like, I'm gonna mirror the way people talk to me. And and I realize that it's something I do a lot. I'm a people pleaser. And I had a counselor who had a stutter in day camp when I was a little kid, and I developed one summer because I'm just mirroring his
Wow.
his language and the way that
Wow.
he speaks. And I think it does come from a place of just wanting to connect with people. I want to be close with people. But I'm curious, on that initial journey, do you have an explicit memory of the first time that you realize you're in it? You're now famous. The world sees you as such. More importantly, the Jewish community sees you as such. And you realize as an individual, the first time you realize, I don't think I can keep this up. I don't think I'm going to be able to carry this as far as they want me to.
Honestly, there wasn't, because for me, again, this was like my journey. You know what I'm saying? This is my thing, From I was a little kid, I wanted to do music, And I went on this journey, spirituality and being alone and trying to figure out what it is that I do and letting go of all of it, and then becoming religious. And then this miraculous thing happens where all the work that I did, the pieces
Coalesces.
that was totally against the grain and not something that you do in school or anything. It was all just this thing that I picked up and created along the way, There was no roadmap. There was no nothing, It was just all creative and pure, and just this, and then learning discipline and becoming religious and letting go and humility and all of that, And then the sort of bonus was, these people love me. These people love me. It was my thing. It was my trip about God. You know what I mean? I was never I was never like a chevraman or like a communal type of person. I was very much a solo, lone, kind of on my own trip. I didn't get interested in religion or Judaism because of Shabbos or Shabbos meals or community. I was looking for something, and And that thing I believed existed inside of me and was something that I had to give to the world. And as time went on, so in the early point of it, when the miracle of like, this is happening, I'm being played on the radio and MTV, and all I did was lean into God and let go. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's like I'm being actually rewarded.
Yeah.
For the work that I've done. When is this real? Does this actually, if this happens, this actually happens, right? And I can see that it's miraculous. This is not the kind of thing that happens with everyone. You know, this is wild to me. You know, I mean, just to give you an idea, I'm 17 years old. I'm on LSD. I've dropped out of high school. I'm living in a car that someone's given me on the road. I have a bag full of quarters, but I'm getting into these Fish concerts every night somehow. And in one of the concerts, I'm like looking at Trey, and he's looking at me, and I'm tripping, right? You feel like completely narcissistic, like everything is you. But nonetheless, I can feel that he's telling me, I'm going to see you in a few years, and we're going to be on stage together. And in 4 years later, after I could not have predicted what would have happened, that I would have gone to Crown Heights, that I would have, you know, all the stuff that I had been through, whatever. I'm like spending Shabbos at Chabad of Tennessee because I'm performing Sunday at Bonnaroo. And I get a call from my manager, Motzi Shabbos, after I've been like learning Chassidus, like well into Motzi Shabbos. It started like 2 hours after Shabbos, but I won't stop learning Chassidus with the rabbi. And he's like, Trey wants to meet you. And I'm in the car, like heading to Bonnaroo, and then I'm on stage with Trey singing a Bob Marley song in front of 50,000 people, you know. And I'm seeing like the whole thing. The whole thing actually happened. It actually worked, you know. So it's just miraculous to me. And then in terms of I had this other side where it's the Chabad, the learning, the mission. Bringing Jews to Judaism. So I'm already fully brainwashed into that whole thing, that if I meet a Jew, I'm asking, can I put tefillin on you? You know, I got to bring you in. I got to bring you in. This is where you need to be. So I have that going on also. That's still a part of me, right? Then I have like my actual nature of who I am, kind of rebellious spirit, people pleaser at the same time, like this weird combination of things. And then things are all starting to happen, you know. It's like a new world of like people liking you, you know, wanting you to be at their party, and for everyone from your parents who, you know, to you know,
all your parents' friends,
yeah,
everybody who meets, everybody
you go
touch.
from being this kind of strange bird, who's like this weird music drug kid, becomes religious. like no one wants you around.
Exactly.
At all.
The last guy to get the party invite.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're like this, you know, you represent what everyone is feeling and can connect to emotionally in some way. And so for me, I guess for a while there was a period of time where I wanted to keep that up.
Yeah.
Literally to the point where the songs were speeding up.
Interesting. The tempo.
There was no dynamics. There was no room for
that ebb and flow.
For anything to break or fall apart and come back together. It was all, you know, just give them the best that you got. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it played out in the music.
Yeah. And it played out to the point where the songs were getting so fast that I couldn't even keep up, you know? And I'm not enjoying it anymore, you know? And so then I start to, I got to go back into the music, because this is the whole thing. This is what got me here. It wasn't because, you know, I'm 6'4". With a nice smile.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was something that I did that connected with people. So I got back into the music and exploring how do I find the, you know, dynamics, and at the same time I start learning Breslov Chassidus, right, out of Chabad. So the whole thing is tied, like. The whole thing is tied, like the perfection. And that's Chabad, right? And then once I start learning like Breslov Chassidus and Haggadah,
it's messier,
Chassidus,
it's grittier.
And the idea that all the craziness and the madness of this world is just a reflection of some part of God that He's expressing here, and it's like God's therapist trying to help him figure it out.
Yeah.
You know? And getting really allowing for some of that. And then at the same time, real life starts to happen. So, okay, who is this person that I'm married to?
Yeah.
You know, I've got kids. I have this community and these people that have certain expectations of me and want certain things from me. Music, the musicians, the fans, managers, you know, all this stuff, real life starts to happen and things start to fall, you know, naturally. Things start to become complicated and fall apart. And then it's just, how do you deal with that?
Do you remember the first person you confided in? I'm talking bearded Chabad Matisyahu. The first person you confided in and said, I think I need out.
Well, I had a really close person. I had one close person in my life. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a good relationship with my wife. My kids were what mattered to me, and my music, you know. And I had one person that was my guide, and then another person that was my guide after that, who was not religious, but Jewish. The first person is a guy named Ephraim Rosenstein. He lived in Hebron for a long time. He studied in Shechem with Yitzhak Ginsburg in this small group of Talmidim.
Yeah.
He's a Chabad guy, Israeli, Russian.
Kabbalistic, obviously, yeah.
He's a very unflashy, unknown entity. The people that know him are cultish about him in a way, but the majority of people have no idea who he is, and he has kept it that way. He had no desire to be known or his name to be known or anything like that. But it's Ephraim Rosenstein. That's who he is. He's
the first
very
person.
Unique person. He was my therapist. He would come to Crown Heights sort of illegally and meet with people in Crown Heights in a basement, and Balchuvas, abused women, just the underbelly of the culture. And he helped a lot of people, and a lot of people became not religious afterwards. He himself is religious.
Yeah.
So anyway, I would say that I remember. So anyway, point is, he was my therapist for a while, and then we started learning together. And he's the person that I really learned with Chassidus. I learned Chassidus with a ton of people, but he's the only person that I really, really learned Chassidus with. So he's sort of like he was like my Rebbe for a while. Then he co-wrote with me lyrics.
Wow.
So we would learn, like we went to the kever of the Baal Shem Tov.
Wow.
And we sat there for 2 weeks and, learned Baal Shem Tov Chassidus, meditation, write lyrics, and those lyrics became like, songs, like, real songs that were, the whole album Light is based on the Seven Beggars, is based on the Reb Nachman Chassidus. So he became sort of like a teacher. And then sometimes I would have him come on tour. I would just feel like I needed someone, I needed help, or I wanted to learn or meditate while I was on tour, or sometimes I would try to get him to work with even the band, the guys in the band and stuff, and do meditations and learning and stuff with them, or therapy with them even, but mainly it was for me. So I remember, sorry for the long-winded answer, but I remember being in Charleston, South Carolina on Shabbos. We stayed by a sort of modern Orthodox family that I think was the rabbi of the shul there. I was married. I think I probably had 2 or 3 kids. I was away from my family for long periods of time, maybe 200 days a year.
Wow.
Or more. Sort of addicted to
the tour and
working.
Yeah.
To working, Because most of the time I wasn't drinking or doing drugs. I was never a cheater. That was never my thing. I just wanted to try to build it and get better at it and at everything, at the spirituality, at God, at music. I was really on a real avoda, that I was doing. and I was pretty much alone in it. You know, and at certain times I'd have relationships with band members, you know, friendships and stuff like that. But so I remember Ephraim coming, and I remember taking a walk with him on Shabbos, and we would learn, you know, we would talk whatever the idea was connected to the Parsha. It might be Kabbalah, it might be Hasidus. We would come up, you know, ideas. Sometimes he would write them. I'd print them out. I'd learn them. I'd meditate on them. And then I would just wander on Shabbos. I would just walk and think about these ideas. So this particular time he was with me, and I remember being there, and I remember saying to him, I have this like fantasy about shaving my beard and getting divorced. And this was like years and years before it happened, you know? And so I asked him, I'm like, you know, why, like, I can't figure out, like, you know, why am I keeping the beard, and why am I staying married to someone that we have no shaykhs to each other, really, outside of the fact that we had kids together. And, you know, I remember, like, his answer at the time was, like, who do you look up to, you know? Do you look up to, like, the people around you, or do you look up to, like, Avram Avinu, Yitzchak? These guys had beards, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, kind of like a basic answer or whatever. But at some point, you know, I started to just feel like I didn't know. I didn't want to have a beard anymore. It wasn't even at that point. It wasn't about the religion. It wasn't about Shabbos or kosher. Or the day after I shaved my beard, I went to the mikveh that morning. It was like a Wednesday morning. I was still like Hasidish.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
No, I remember when you released the picture. I think you posted on social media. Said like.
So yeah, my wife too remembers. You know, like her rabbi in yeshiva was like, "Look what happened to Matisyahu." I didn't have like a publicist, I don't think, at the time. And I wasn't making, you know, calculated decisions.
Yeah.
You know, career decisions.
No,
or
it was
whatever.
like very raw. It was like new Matis or.
I was 160 pounds. You know, I was macrobiotic at the time. I had had a cyst on my vocal cord, and I was living in my voice teacher's house on the Upper West Side. This guy, Darryl Lauer, who teaches at YU for years. And I was on complete vocal silence. So I was away from my family again, not talking, doing like 8 voice lessons a day, short ones, like
and not
10-minute
talking
voice lessons, but not talking in between.
You feel that self-alienation.
Yeah. And then I had some kind of stomach issue that I was trying, instead of taking antibiotics, I was trying to heal with macrobiotics. So I was already like 4 months deep into just eating brown rice and stuff. So, you know, I shaved my beard, and then I was in my voice teacher's bathroom is where I was when I took that picture. And I wasn't even going to say anything about it because it was so personal to me.
Yeah.
I didn't think about how are people going to really react to it, or will they care or whatever. And then I realized I had a concert like that in 2 days in Denver, and I was going to show up with no beard, and people were going to be like, what
That's
the
the
hell?
whole shtick. It's like Kiss showing up without makeup.
Yeah, and I was on Twitter.
Yeah.
And someone was writing on Twitter, and they quoted one of my songs, "Thunder" from Light, and the lyric in there is like, oh man, I want to look it up because I always think of the second half, but the first half of it really is what makes it more potent. Thunder.
This is great. No, the real musical greats have to Google their own lyrics.
So, like, a lot of my writing, when I write lyrics, it's like sometimes it's more calculated, but a lot of it is just stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is sort of prophetic to my own life of things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
That I'm calculating subconsciously but not aware of.
Sure.
And therefore kind of. So like the lyric for this song "Thunder," which is 2010, full Matis.
Yeah.
You know, one day. Is like, I had to cross the line to leave you behind with hopes to find some peace of mind. Now I'm looking for your voice through the chitter-chatter that doesn't matter. It's torn and tattered, there's angels on the ladder. This laughter, strip away the extra plaster. I'm crashing fast, it's the morning after. Through the hum and the buzz, the thickness and the fuzz. I jump over puddles and stomp through the sludge. Look for me through the wind and rain. Sunshine, remember my name. I'll be coming, yes I'm running, I'm on my way. Just stay, I'll be there by the break of day, right? I had to evacuate the premises. You're your own nemesis. The premises, you're born in blood and leave the world penniless. Remember that there's darkness before the exodus. Split the sea, will flee to the next. Come invent with us, right? So all
It's a lot
that,
about like escape.
it's all about this, you know, if you look at
Leaving.
it, right? But none of that was what this guy wrote. What he wrote is, City lights shine and I'll find my way. This time tomorrow I'll be on my way. At the break of day, I look for you at sunrise. When the tide comes in, I'll lose my disguise. So he quotes those last two lines.
When the tide comes in, I'll lose my disguise.
And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. So I take a picture and I quote that.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of people saw that picture and were like, he must be on drugs, or, I looked so skinny.
Yeah,
so thin.
yeah, you were gaunt.
People thought that, like, oh, he's not healthy. And, it was just a spot that I was in, but it wasn't. I've been on drugs, but that wasn't the time.
It's so interesting.
On the contrary, that was the time when I felt the most spiritually
aligned.
connected.
Yeah. There was one thing that I wanted to kind of bring up, because I experienced your transformation at a time in my life where I was also in a way transforming, because I studied in Ner Yisroel. I had the black hat. I had the, really looked yeshivish, like proper in every sense of the word. I was representing that. And I left yeshiva and I ended up going to Yeshiva University, which is a great place. I teach there now. Not knocking any institution, but I was in a really lonely, dark place. And I remember that was probably, do you remember what year this took place
when I shaved? I think it was it 2013 or something like around that time?
So I'm alone. I'm by myself. I should be married already.
Right.
And I was watching you, and more importantly, I was watching the way the community reacted to you. And it scared me, because I was also transforming. I was also trying to find my place of who I was going to be. And in a way, and I showed you this article I wrote, which is called Spiritual Schadenfreude, a case study of Matisyahu's beard. And what I was really exploring wasn't you and your beard. I was exploring the way the community...
The reaction.
Yeah, the way the community reacts, that sense of betrayal.
Yeah.
And why does the community react that way? And the reason why I was so drawn to that story is because in a lot of ways it was what I was going through.
Yep.
Because I wasn't wearing the black hat anymore.
Right.
I bought a pair of jeans,
Right.
Which if you grow up in, if you're in the yeshiva world, that's
taking off the hat is
a statement.
Huge
Everything's a statement.
Yeah.
And I was afraid that people were going to look at me the same way I was seeing people look at you and see, I told you so.
Yeah.
I told you so.
Yeah.
He left yeshiva, and this is what happens.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear really two things from you. I want to say one thing and hear another thing. The first thing I wanted to say, and this is on behalf of nobody other than myself, but like in a very real way, I wanted to almost say, like, I'm sorry for what you went through. Like, I don't know if a communal pressure or the reaction at any point hurt you in a personal way. You seem really individualistic. But I know from myself, and I could only imagine, that you representing something and you bringing so much positivity and music, and then your journey changing, and then hearing so much negativity, betrayal, and hurt from the community, that must have been like really difficult. And I almost wanted to say, I can't speak on behalf of any community, but I want to say, like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that your personal journey ended up being the target for so many other people's insecurities, sense of betrayal, sense of concern of where their life is unfolding.
Yeah.
Because I know what that's like.
Yeah.
I know what that's like to feel like people are looking up to you,
Yeah.
and they're expecting something very specific.
Yeah.
And then in their eyes, you let them down, and
Yeah.
you're like, I can't be everything to everyone.
Well, let me just speak to that before you go to two.
Yeah.
It's what you do. Like, if you put yourself out there, then that you can't. That's it. You make a deal.
Yeah.
It's like a deal with the devil.
Yes.
So while the truth is that I was hurt by a lot of stuff, not just from the religious community, but even from the music community when I started doing, and the reggae community. I mean, I started really pushing the songs into different places and trying different things and new things, across the board, not just in religion, and got a lot of backlash all along the way, and was in tune with that. Whereas now, there might or may not be backlash, but I have no clue.
Yeah.
I really don't care and don't tune in, you know?
Yeah.
But at that time, with the beginning of the internet and Twitter and all of that, was like I had no guard for it. So I was taking everything in. I'm a Cancer. I'm a sensitive soul.
Yeah.
And it really did put me through some trauma. But it was I never once really, like, I get angry at people and stuff like that, but I never once would be like, oh, like, why did this happen to me, or like put the blame on people, because if anything, yeah, I became more cynical, maybe, that people, like, by nature are not going, these people that you thought were your fans or whatever, or who really loved you, are not going to, they're not going to take 5 seconds to try to actually figure out what may or may not have happened along the way.
Yeah.
You know, people, like you write in your article, you know, their base level is to right away just jump and be like, I told you so, see what happened, you know, and compare. It's an ego thing, I think. I mean, and I realized that, you know what I mean? So I never like expected any kind of apology from anybody. Thank you very much. But you know what I mean? It's my own, like, pain, what I went through is because I chose to, like, put my life into the hands of the world, like, put it out there into the world,
Yeah.
and say, look at me.
Yeah.
Look at me. I mean, listen to my music.
And that's what happens.
Hear what I have to say. Yeah. And so once you do that, you know, you can't now go, oh, you know, can't people just leave me alone or whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
was there a point, and now, you know, you know, this summer you stepped into some pretty Orthodox spaces, you know, you went to Camp Hask, I saw,
Yeah.
which is my good friend Reb
No, it
Michelle.
felt great.
When you step back into those places, is there a part of you that sense of, am I being judged? Am I really being accepted? Does any of that bubble up?
Not so much. I mean, in certain places, I feel that judgment more around wealth,
Interesting.
like wealthy Jews,
Yeah.
than who oftentimes are religious, you know,
Yeah,
potentially.
sure.
But not as much. Religious Jews, to me, don't bother me as much. I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like I have a
But let me ask you
grasp on
something.
them. Like, for example,
yeah.
I met a Chabad guy yesterday. And the other day I was doing a show somewhere, and he starts, like, going on, and he starts to say something about losing touch or whatever. I'm like, there's two things that I can't lose touch with Chabad. One, this mikvah foot on my right foot, I can't shake it. Like from the Union Street mikvah, it stays with me for life. Like, the second thing is I keep having babies born on the Rebbe's birthdays.
Is that true?
Shvat, yeah, Yud Nissen, Yud Shvat, like one after the next. So, you know, I mean, like, I love religious people. I love the religious community, and I love a lot of the aspects of the religion. A lot of it. There's a lot of it that's so special and unique, and I truly feel that without that, the Jewish people would not be in existence, without the religious community and people. And even at times when I was not davening or putting tefillin on, I would think about my minyan that I used to go to, like in Williamsburg, like Toldos Aaron. There was like one minyan I used to go to where they yell. And just the thought of knowing that they're doing it kind of, like, made me feel like, okay, like,
so at least someone's screaming.
God is good. Like, God, you know, someone's screaming at God.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, yeah. I mean,
let me ask
stepping
you,
back into these religious, you know,
spaces.
circles and spaces and stuff, it seems to me there's some kind of, like, a real, Zalman Schachter used to talk about the paradigm shift.
Yeah.
You know? It feels to me a paradigm shift. You know, there's a shift.
For sure.
There's something has changed, and it's really no longer about religious or not religious.
Yeah.
It doesn't, that is not no longer the
main organizing principle.
Yeah, exactly.
I think October 7th opened that up a lot for a lot of people.
It changes.
But let me ask you, just thinking back and asking, you know, I grew up in the Orthodox community. I associate and affiliate as Orthodox. Is there any advice you would give to the community? I know the community probably gave you a lot of advice and telling you to do a lot of things differently or what you could have done. But I'm curious for you to look back and almost not critique or not, you know, with anger, but constructively and say, look, you know, when you guys, you know, God willing, there'll be other stars that come up from your community. Don't make this mistake again. And there were ways that people spoke to me or ways people approached me from within the community that, like, we can do better than that. Is there any kind of feedback you would give in that respect?
Nothing is really sparking, you know. I'm not thinking of anything really, you know. Maybe
it might be a sign that there's real shalom, there's real peace.
No, there's obviously there's people, you know, that say things to try to just upset you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because of their own insecurities.
Sure.
And those people exist in the religious world and they exist outside the religious world, and you'll have to deal with those people throughout life, you know. In terms of the community itself, most of the time I felt pretty welcome in most places. You know, the community is what it is, you know. It is what it is.
I'm happy to hear that. And my only, you know, I really feel a sense of sorrow, even if there was a tinge, because the characteristics I hate the most is cynicism. It's like the opposite of spirituality to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I became cynical, like how many people are reaching a new level of cynical now with what's going on.
Yeah.
And it should be like looking at the world and looking at people and being like this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, how do we deal with this? How do you deal with this level of stupidity and ignorance?
Yeah.
And violence. I mean, so yeah, that was a stop along the way where I was like, all right, you know, I thought, you know, it's interesting because you would think, okay, if Matisyahu, right, if all he was a Jewish face on TV that made me feel cool about being Jewish or okay with being Jewish, then I completely understand why when he was no longer looking Jewish, you would do that, right?
Yeah.
I thought a lot of people were more than that. I thought they really lived with, like, they were my Hasidim. Like, I thought they really lived with the words, the music, came to the shows, had the experiences. But the majority of people were not, you know, obviously, you know. Maybe they saw a video or they heard a song, you know, or they heard One Day or whatever, but they were not like people that really...
They weren't immersed in the music
now,
and the
there
message.
were people that did, you know, that were. And it wasn't like, you know, so many.
Yeah.
But there was a group of like these core Matisyahu fans that really were like, well, what is going on? And really read the interviews, because I did a lot of interviews.
Yeah, you know? I think I was one of those people.
Yeah, I mean, I got into
because I identified with the journey
I got
so
into
much.
it, and I really, you know, and so, you know, I think that those people, you know, were the core fans, and what I realized was they're not Jews. They weren't.
Some of them are.
No, some of them were Jews.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah,
but they wouldn't. If you
but
looked
that's
at them,
if you
looked at them in a room, and honestly, most of them were not. 90%, probably 80%.
Yeah.
You know, most of the Jews that were religious, they couldn't handle that. Like you said, that betrayal, that sense of like, well, if he did it, if I respect him, then that means I have to do it.
Yeah.
So I have to not respect him. You know
exactly.
what I mean? That was
Spiritual
the only way that
Freud.
people could see it. Yeah. They couldn't get beyond it.
They had to chop
like
you down.
said, with empathy.
Exactly.
And say, if God is real, you know, then it's not about... It doesn't
about
have
Matisyahu in your life.
It doesn't have to add up that way. You know what I mean? But so so what I found was like this group of people that really, you know, and that became like the people that's how I paid my kids' yeshiva bills, and you know, my ex-wife's alimony was by playing 200 shows a year to 500 people in a room, you know, in 75 markets in America. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Kansas. You
really did the journey.
Yeah. I come to New York, I play for 500 people.
Yeah.
I go to Omaha, I play for 1,000 people.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
That is interesting.
The fans became people that really lived, and there was an album that I put out in 2014 called Akeda. Akeda. Yeah. You know, like Abraham on the mountain top, slaughtering Isaac, you know? And that's what it was for me, you know, it was the slaughter. It was bringing Isaac to the top of the mountain.
Exactly.
And those songs to this day are, I feel, my best songs.
Interesting.
And
right after that,
those core fans, they feel those. That's
they know.
That's the heart of Matisyahu.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've been incredibly generous with your time. I always wrap up my interviews with rapid fire questions. I was wondering, you have time for that? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I'll try it.
So my first
Although
question.
I'm not very rapid fire, but
No,
I'll
that's
give it a
okay.
shot.
You're a man who has been on a real Jewish journey, and now there are a lot of Jews waking up now who maybe never experienced their Jewish identity as like a tangible part of who they are. And the last couple months, you have so much of world Jewry, American Jewry, who's waking up, and they want more. Do you have a recommendation specifically? Given everything you've been through, somebody comes to you and says, like, I'm looking for more. I wasn't raised with much. Where would you tell them to start? Is there a book recommendation? Is there... They want to have that authenticity. They want to experience Yiddishkeit. You know what I'm saying? They don't just want to go to a federation event.
Yeah.
They want Yiddishkeit.
I mean, for me, Shlomo Carlebach was the first way in. Going to the Carlebach Shul on the Upper West Side on 79th Street.
Yeah.
That was the first place that I felt like some soulfulness in a shul, I guess, with the music. And then I started reading, like, his book, like Holy Brother and stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, that was my, like, gateway drug into Judaism.
Okay.
And then I would say, like, Heschel.
Yes. Sabbath. And
Sabbath.
God in Search of Man.
God in Search of Man. Psychology, R.D. Lang. Politics of Experience.
Cool. My next question, if somebody gave you a great deal of money that allowed you to take a sabbatical with no responsibilities whatsoever to go back to school and get a PhD, what do you think you would study?
Engineering.
Yeah,
Yeah, technical engineering, like in the studio, like music. Like,
for real, are you drawn to that a little bit?
No, I just wish I knew how to do it.
Some technical knowledge. I appreciate that.
I had more technical knowledge. Yeah.
My final question, I'm always curious about people's sleep schedules because I have such a terrible one myself.
Yeah.
What time do you go to sleep at night? What time do you wake up in the morning?
I go to sleep usually by midnight, and I wake up by 6:37.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah.
Matis, I cannot thank you enough for just sharing your time, your journey, and just sharing all my love to you and continued success on this journey that we're all on and still unfolding.
Thank you.